Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. Islamabad and New Delhi have signed the Kartarpur Corridor Agreement at the zero line near Pakistan's Narwal district. Pakistan's Foreign Ministry spokesman Mohammad Faisal and Indian Joint Secretary of Home Ministry SCL Das inked the agreement. Speaking after the ceremony, Faisal said the agreement is a historic achievement by Pakistan in its pursuit of regional peace and stability. Faisal said Prime Minister Imran Khan had fulfilled his promise and completed the corridor in a year. He said a visa-free link between Darbar Sahib in Kartarpur and Dera Baba Nanak Shrine in India's Punjab will open for the pilgrims.
The agreement will facilitate pilgrims to visit Gurdwara Kartarpur Sahib 7 days a week. From dawn to dusk. The yatris would come in the morning and go back in the evening. We have agreed in the agreement that up to 5,000, of course, we'll try to accommodate, and more if there is more capacity. Visa-free travel, no visa.
New Delhi's crushing curfew has deteriorated the mental health of people in occupied Kashmir drastically. The latest report by international journalists has exposed the worsening state of affairs in the occupied valley. They conducted multiple interviews of the local doctors and civilians. The report said that there is a rise in patients with stress and anxiety over past 80 days. It said the trauma of living in fear of Indian Army's abductions, torture and arrests is the main cause. It added that over 170 patients visit clinics daily. The report said the actual number of sufferers is much higher as most cannot reach hospitals due to the clampdown. New Delhi's curfew and the communications blackout has entered 81st day in the occupied territory. The people and the political parties of occupied Kashmir have completely boycotted the council elections. The ruling Bharatiya Janata Party is the only major party contesting the elections. International watchdogs and media say the polls have zero credibility due to local rejection and non-participation. Locals said this is more like completing a formality as it looks more like an artificial exercise. In 2018, 60% of over 21,000 village council seats remained vacant due to boycott. Locals fear the imposition of a right-wing extremist Hindutva operatives of BJP through the fake electoral exercise. The civil society members have slammed India over human rights abuses during the US Congressional hearing on occupied Kashmir. The Congressional body's hearing was held earlier this week to highlight humanitarian crisis in the valley. Professor at the University of Westminster, Natasha Cole, said India has broken every single principle of democracy in the valley. Anjana Chatterjee from University of California said the human rights abuses may lead to an armed uprising in occupied Kashmir. Amnesty International official Francisco Bencosme said his organization has documented a clear pattern of human rights violations in the valley. President Donald Trump says the U.S. is lifting sanctions against Turkey after a ceasefire along its border with Syria. But he warned that sanctions can be reimposed if Turkey fails to protect religious and ethnic minorities. Speaking at the White House, Trump said a small number of U.S. troops will remain in Syria to protect oil fields. Trump said he is committed to pursuing a different course in the Middle East. He said the U.S. should only commit troops to battle when its national interest is at stake.
After all of the precious blood and treasure America has poured into the deserts of the Middle East, I am committed to pursuing a different course, one that leads to victory for America.
Iraq's Prime Minister Abdul Mahdi says his government is taking legal measures over the entry of the U.S. troops from Syria. After a meeting with the U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper in Baghdad, Mahdi said U.S. troops moving into Iraq are not allowed to remain in the country. He asked the international community and the United Nations to play their role in the matter. Before the meeting, Esper said U.S. troops withdrawing from Syria will go to western Iraq to fight ISIS. The U.S. has over 5,000 troops based in Iraq as part of an international coalition to fight ISIS. Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces have assured Russia they will keep their end of the ceasefire deal. Talking to Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, SDF head Mazloum Abdi thanked Moscow for saving his people. Shoigu said he told the SDF head to implement the Russian-Turkish-Syria deal from their side. Russian military police started deploying on Syria's northeast border on Wednesday. Under the deal signed in Sochi on Tuesday, Turkey will remain fully deployed in an Arab-majority area. It also requires Kurdish forces to pull back to a line 30 kilometers from the entire border, forcing them to surrender some of their main towns. Russia and Turkey will then start joint patrols in 2 zones along the border. Russia and African states have created a mutual trading platform worth $5 billion at the Sochi summit. The Russian Export Center says the agreement will give Moscow access to the African market. Director Andrei Shepelyov said Russia will in turn open a trade corridor to the African continent. Moscow says the deal will boost cooperation with the African states through new trade and investment mechanisms. In Libya, 3 civilians have been killed and 7 others injured in fresh airstrikes by Khalifa Haftar's forces near the capital, Tripoli. The Libyan government said the raids hit residential areas in southern Al-Savani area. Earlier, 2 children were killed and 3 civilians injured in shelling close to the same neighborhood. In April, Haftar's forces launched a military campaign to capture Tripoli from the internationally recognized government. In Yemen, the government and Houthi rebels have set up joint observation posts as part of de-escalation moves in the city of Hodeidah. UN envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, called the establishment of 4 observation posts a positive move. Last year, a ceasefire and a troop redeployment agreement for Hodeidah was reached in UN broker talks in Sweden. It was agreed as a trust-building measure to pave way for wider talks to end the war. In May, the UN announced that the rebels have withdrawn from Hodeidah and 2 nearby ports. The country is embroiled in a conflict between the government and the rebels since 2014. The UN has called Israel's 52-year hold on Palestine the longest belligerent occupation in the modern world. Briefing the General Assembly, UN Special Rapporteur in Palestine, Michael Link said Israel is violating international law. He called for a decisive international intervention to end the grossly unequal balance of power in the region. Link said Israel's blockade of Gaza is a denial of basic human rights and amounts to collective punishment. Meanwhile, Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu asked the international community to stop Israel's sabotage of the 2-state solution. Israeli-Palestinian peace process collapsed in 2014 due to Israel's continued refusal to end occupation of the West Bank. The United States government has said it supports Lebanese protesters' call for economic reforms. A senior State Department official said people are rightfully angered with their government over its way to tackle corruption. The top U.S. official for the Middle East, David Shanker, has offered Washington's assistance to the Lebanese government for taking the reforms. Lebanon has been swept by anti-government protests, which have paralyzed the country for a week. Protesters say they are challenging a system that fuels inequality, nepotism, and corruption. Afghan Foreign Minister Salahuddin Rabbani has resigned over differences with President Ashraf Ghani. In a letter to Ghani, Rabbani said the president is running the country like a personal NGO. Rabbani said the Ghani administration has failed to provide a conducive working environment or establish peace in the country. Rabbani blamed the presidential palace of undermining key national institutions. Chancellor Merkel says Germany will not oppose any EU proposal to grant Britain a Brexit extension beyond its deadline. Merkel and the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson discussed the future of the UK's bid for Brexit. Johnson said he is opposed to any further delay beyond October 31st. He said he holds a majority in the Parliament for his Brexit deal. Bolivia's President Morales has claimed an outright majority in the presidential elections. Official count shows Morales ahead of his opponent by 10 points, ruling out the possibility of a second-round runoff vote. With over 98% of the votes counted, Morales has secured around 47% of the vote. Organization of American States monitored votes, and the EU have called for a second round, citing serious discrepancies in electoral process. Delays in the count following Sunday's election fueled skepticism that Morales influenced the results. Following the delay, a sudden shift in Morales' favor fanned violent protests across the country. Morales has called the protests a coup attempt against him by his opposition. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with Indus. Welcome back. A Russian woman accused of being a spy in the U.S. is finally being released by Washington after a 3-year trial. Maria Butina is the only Russian citizen ever to have been convicted in the U.S. Her lawyer, Robert Driscoll, said Butina would return to Russia on Friday. Butina said she was on a quest to establish better relations between Russia and the U.S. She was arrested in July 2018 on espionage allegations. In December, Butina entered a plea deal on a charge that she acted as an illegal, unregistered foreign agent. In the U.S., Democrat leaders of the House committees say the State Department has refused to share the documents in an impeachment probe. The committees earlier issued a subpoena for the documents in the probe against President Donald Trump. In a letter to Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan, the leaders said the refusal amounts to obstruction of the functions of Congress. They said the committees have gathered evidence about the relevance of the documents to the allegations against Trump. The president is facing allegations of abusing power for political benefit. The Democrats said the documents include memos on efforts to intimidate employees and Trump's request to Ukraine for political investigations. British police have raided 2 houses in Northern Ireland during the investigation of 39 bodies found inside a truck. Police said the trailer had arrived at docks in southern England after traveling from Belgium. It said the red cab unit of the truck was believed to have originated in Ireland. Earlier, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has termed the incident an unimaginable tragedy and truly heartbreaking. He said human traffickers should be hunted down and brought to justice. The National Crime Agency said it is working to identify and take action against organized crime groups. In Chile, a 4-year-old child was killed during the latest round of protests, raising the death toll to 18. President Sebastián Piñera has announced ambitious reforms to pacify the protesters. Police have arrested over 5,000 people since the start of the demonstrations. Many student groups and teachers also joined the protests, leaving most of the country's schools closed. The protest was sparked by a hike in transport fares, but grew bigger as thousands took to the streets over austerity measures and inequality. All the countries around the world are observing the 74th United Nations Day, reminding the cause behind the peacekeeping organization. Secretary General Antonio Guterres promised to strive for human rights. In a message, Guterres said the organization will continue focusing people's real problems at the time of global armed conflicts and climate change. On this day, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan reminds UN Security Council to fulfill its commitments towards the issue of Indian-occupied Kashmir. He says Pakistan is an ardent supporter of United Nations and will always stand with it for the common cause of world peace. Pakistan has jumped up 28 places on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index. The international financial body released its World Index today. World Bank country director Elango Pachamutu said Islamabad's recent reforms have led to the achievement. He said the improvement has been observed at federal and provincial levels. He said Islamabad also jumped around 10 points on the International Best Practices Barometer. On his recent foreign visits, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan met a delegation of foreign investors. PM Khan invited them to make the best use of the opportunities in Pakistan under the vision of shared growth. Pakistan is one of the 3 countries in the world where polio is still endemic. The other 2 are neighboring Afghanistan and Nigeria, but Pakistan is geared up to go polio-free this year thanks to a robust immunization campaign and support from the international partners. More in this report from Sumaira Khan.
Pakistan has come a long way in efforts to eradicate polio. In early 90s, the annual incidence of polio was estimated at more than 20,000 cases a year. Sensing the gravity of the situation, the government launched a nationwide polio eradication program in 1994. Over the last 5 years, the number of cases has declined from 306 in 2014 to 62 reported this year so far. In 2013, the World Health Organization imposed strict travel restrictions on Pakistan due to a short-term increase in the number of polio infections in the country. With the number of infections rapidly falling, Pakistan hopes to get the restrictions lifted soon. Pakistan has established a state-of-the-art laboratory at the National Institute of Health in Islamabad to strengthen surveillance of the polio virus.
You are standing in the WHO Regional Reference Laboratory, which is a part of the Global Polio Lab Network, and it is a WHO accredited laboratory. And if we talk about the polio eradication program in Pakistan, it is considered to be one of the best program in the Global Polio Eradication Initiative.
The polio virus targets children under the age of 5 and is usually spread via infected water. There is no specific treatment or cure, but several vaccines exist. Reporting for Indus News, Sumaira Khan, Islamabad.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg says he's open to scaling back plans for its digital currency Libra if it cannot win approval. Zuckerberg made the comments at the US Congressional hearing over the planned cryptocurrency he's seeking to roll out next year. He said the goal of Libra is to build a global payment system rather than a currency. Congresswoman Maxine Waters said Facebook should address existing deficiencies before proceeding with the project. But Republican Representative Patrick McHenry said the plan should be given the benefit of the doubt. In Mexico, hundreds of clowns march merrily through Mexico City to mark the 24th Annual International Clown Convention. The 4-day festival of intense happiness aims at hoping the witchcraft and supporting the clown industry. More in this report.
Singing and dancing in Mexican streets, crowds of happy clowns paraded to the delight of curious onlookers. Many performed tricks to amuse their viewers. Clowns are an integral part of Mexican culture and life.
It's a blessing to be a clown. God created different people, and my most important quality is to be a clown.
According to the Latin American Clown Association, there are some 10,000 professional clowns registered in Mexico. Thousands pop up on traffic intersections to perform and earn a few pesos. It's a tough life for them, but the convention is part of an effort to maintain high standards of clowning. The festival arranges a series of workshops to help the clowns with the latest costumes, shoes, makeup, and magic tricks.
We are marking 24 years of this Fair of Laughter. That is wonderful, and it's great more colleagues were able to come to have fun with us, to train ourselves better so that there will be more work.
During 4 days, around 450 clowns from 14 countries will attend the festival to spread happiness, laughter, and smiles.
In Nepal, authorities have found new ways to tackle the tons of waste on Mount Everest. Now, trash from the mountain is used to make upcycled items for homes and hotels in Kathmandu and other major cities. Details in this report.
A group of tourists sips water at a hotel in Kathmandu in Nepal, unaware that these green glasses were once bottles discarded on Mount Everest. Earlier this year, Nepal's government and mountaineering groups organised a 6-week cleanup operation on the world's tallest mountain. A 14-member team retrieved over 10 tons of waste that was later sent to recycling centres where the workers sorted materials manually.
At least the waste is not dumped. We are working to recycle and upcycle this waste as much as possible. And we don't need big technology for this. We are working out of small units.
Community NGOs also recently launched a campaign to transport waste to recycling centres by harnessing roughly 50,000 trekkers. They were each asked to carry a 1 kilogram pouch of trash to Kathmandu for recycling.
It's not just better for us and the environment, but then it goes bigger, way bigger than that. It's recycling, upcycling, encouragement of everyone who's trying to move into that direction of making the globe into a better place, reducing all the waste.
Mountaineers still warn that the collected waste is just a fraction of Mount Everest's rubbish. Reversing the damage caused by tourists over the decades remains a work in progress.
Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For latest updates, you may follow us on social media at Indus.news.